I am not a villain in real life. I just play one in the movies. Michael Madsen. How do you say goodbye to a man who made being broken look poetic? How do you mourn someone who played killers and criminals, yet carried the soul of a poet behind the scenes? Michael Madsen, the gravel-voiced enigma of American cinema, is gone. And with him goes an entire era of storytelling where darkness wasn't just performed. It was lived, felt, and transformed into art. Known for his unforgettable performances in Reservoir Dogs, Kill Bill, and dozens of cult classics, Madsen wasn't just an actor. He was a force, a contradiction, a wounded warrior who brought terrifying beauty to every role he touched. Now, as Hollywood stands in stunned silence, we're left asking, who was the man behind the mirrored sunglasses and the leather jacket? And what pain did he carry that we never truly saw? This is not just a farewell. This is a reckoning with a legacy, tragic, tender, and unforgettable. This is how we remember Michael Madsen. From the moment he walked onto the screen, Madsen brought a raw authenticity to every role he played. With his gravelly voice, intense gaze, and towering presence, he didn't just act. He embodied his characters. He didn't just play criminals, outlaws, or anti-heroes. He made them human. In 1992, Madsen etched his name into film history as Mr. Blonde in Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. The infamous "stuck in the middle with you" scene remains one of the most chilling and iconic sequences in cinema, and Madsen's performance still echoes decades later. Tarantino once called him a true outlaw actor, and that label stuck. His work in Kill Bill, Donnie Brasco, The Hateful Eight, Sin City, and countless other films showcased his remarkable range. He could be dangerous, tender, hilarious, and tragic, all in the same frame. What many don't know is that beyond the tough exteriors and hard-hitting performances, Michael Madsen was also a poet. He wrote several collections of poetry, including Burning in Paradise and American Badass. His writing revealed a man constantly wrestling with love, regret, and redemption. He often spoke of how acting was only one side of him, and poetry allowed him to show a quieter, more vulnerable face to the world. His poems were laced with longing and self-awareness, written by a man who had lived many lives and wasn't afraid to show his scars. Behind the rugged voice, the dark sunglasses, and the tough guy persona Michael Madsen carried so well on screen was a man who endured more than his fair share of private heartache. While his roles often portrayed cold-blooded criminals or hardened outlaws, the reality of Madsen's life was filled with emotional complexities, family devotion, and deep personal loss. Madsen openly battled addiction for much of his adult life, a struggle he never glamorized, but also never ran from. In interviews, he often referred to his demons as shadows that sometimes walk ahead of me instead of behind. It was this self-awareness, rare among Hollywood figures, that made him such a raw and relatable presence, not just in his acting, but in life. His struggles with alcoholism and substance abuse were well documented. At various points in his career, these challenges threatened to derail him. There were stints in rehab, public incidents, and a few run-ins with the law. But Madsen always came back swinging. He never made excuses, instead offering brutal honesty about the toll fame, pain, and regret could take on a man. And yet, through all of this, he remained deeply committed to his family, and perhaps that was his greatest strength. Michael Madsen was a father of 6 children, and he wore that title with pride. He often spoke about his kids in interviews, his voice softening whenever their names came up. His oldest son, Christian, followed in his footsteps and became an actor, starring in films like Divergent. Madsen was proud, not because his son pursued Hollywood, but because he did so on his own terms with integrity. But perhaps the deepest wound Madsen ever carried was the tragic loss of his son, Hudson Madsen, in January 2022. Hudson, a U.S. Army veteran who had served in Afghanistan, died by suicide at the age of 26 while living in Hawaii. The news shattered Michael, It was the kind of loss no parent can prepare for, let alone heal from. In the months following Hudson's death, those close to Madsen said he was forever changed. While he tried to stay strong for the rest of his family, his eyes told a different story. The sorrow was ever present. He blamed himself, wrestled with guilt, and openly questioned how he could go on. Yet he did, quietly, painfully, but determinedly. He turned, as he often did, to poetry. In the lines of his later writings, you can feel the weight of his grief. One poem, shared with a close friend but never published, read, "They tell me to let go, but they never held you like I did. They never saw the boy in the man, or heard the silence in his smile." Madsen's poetry was never flowery or polished. It was raw, emotional, and deeply personal. Writing became his sanctuary, a place where he could unravel the pain without judgment. Despite his own struggles, Michael was known among friends and co-stars as the guy who would drop everything to help someone else. He was fiercely loyal, almost to a fault. Friends often described him as the guy who never forgot your name, and the man who'd still call you on your birthday, even if you hadn't spoken in years. He had that rare quality in Hollywood, a realness that people gravitated toward. Actor Danny Trejo once said, "Mike had this energy. You knew he was wild, but you also knew he'd give you the shirt off his back. He'd fight for you, cry with you, and never judge your past." Michael's home was always open to those who needed a place to crash or a warm meal. In the later years of his life, his Malibu house was a safe haven for friends, fellow actors, and even struggling musicians. He loved to cook, often preparing massive spaghetti dinners for friends and family. He was a collector of vintage cars, old records, and handwritten letters from fans, which he kept in a box marked "Keep Forever." Even during his darkest hours, Madsen refused to be consumed by bitterness. He never stopped working, never stopped writing. Acting became both a job and a form of therapy. He poured his grief into his characters, giving even the cruelest villains a sliver of humanity. One of his final projects, a small independent film yet to be released at the time of his passing, reportedly includes a scene where his character visits his son's grave. Crew members later said that Michael stayed behind long after the cameras stopped rolling, silent, still, and lost in thought. "It didn't feel like acting," one member said. "It felt like Michael was talking to his own son." In the end, Michael Madsen was not just an actor. He was a father grieving a son, a man trying to outrun regret, a friend who never forgot where he came from. His story is not only one of Hollywood acclaim or iconic roles. It is a human story, one filled with flaws, with passion, and with a depth of emotion that made him more than just a movie star. He was the kind of man who could make you laugh one moment and break your heart the next. And in that complexity, he found his truth. He leaves behind a legacy not just of unforgettable performances, but of love, pain, and resilience. His family, though fractured by loss, remains bonded by the memory of a man who loved them fiercely, even when he didn't always have the words to show it. Michael Madsen's life was a mosaic of broken pieces, some sharp, some beautiful, but all real. And in remembering him, we remember that even the toughest men bleed. Even the fiercest actors cry, and sometimes the people who seem the strongest are the ones carrying the heaviest burdens. Since the announcement of his passing, tributes have flooded social media from co-stars, fans, and filmmakers. Quentin Tarantino posted a photo of the two of them from the Reservoir Dogs set with the caption, "You gave me my first masterpiece. I gave you Mr. Blonde. We gave each other something immortal. Rest easy, brother." Actor Tim Roth, who starred alongside Madsen in several films, called him a giant with a poet's heart, while Uma Thurman remembered him as both terrifying and tender. Michael Madsen may never have been the leading man in the traditional sense, but he was a scene stealer, a character actor who elevated every project he touched. He belonged to a rare class of actors who were unapologetically themselves, unpolished, and unpredictable in the best way. He leaves behind a body of work that continues to inspire actors, filmmakers, and fans. His roles will be studied for years to come, not just because of the violence or swagger, but because of the pain, humor, and vulnerability he brought to them. Michael Madsen once said in an interview, "I think people like me because I don't play the hero. I play the guy who could be bad, but maybe isn't, if you look closer." That quote perfectly captures his magic. He wasn't just the man in the black suit dancing to Steelers Wheel. He was a wounded soul who never gave up trying to find beauty in a broken world. And in doing so, he gave us art that will never die. Rest in peace, Michael Madsen. You were more than just Mr. Blonde. You were one of a kind.